Good morning and welcome to the 9:30 call. It's great to see folks.
Hola, bienvenidos a la llamada de 9:30. Es increíble verles a todos.
Good morning, Shay.
Good morning.
Okay, I hid my captions. That was making me crazy. We are recording this morning. It's great to see folks. 116, Commissioner. Pretty good. We know, I will turn things over to Julian.
Perfect. Thank you, Amy. Okay, good morning, everyone. We're gonna share my screen and we're going to make this announcement in English and Spanish to show you how to select your language. In just a moment, you will see this globe icon next to the word interpretation. You will find it at the bottom of your Zoom screen. If you click on that globe, you can select your language. If you have joined from a cell phone or tablet, look for the three dots buttons on your screen next to the word more. From there, you will see interpretation as an option in the list to choose your language. An important reminder, regardless the language you speak, everyone has to select the language. Now, I will turn it over to Shay to repeat that in Spanish.
Hola, buenos días a todos. Ya vamos a comenzar con la reunión y la interpretación. Para conectar a la interpretación de tu canal de español, si están en un computador, va a aparecer un icono de un globo en la parte inferior de tu pantalla y ahí puedes seleccionar español. Si estás en un celular o en una tableta, en vez que el globo, puedes conectar al canal del español ubicando los tres puntos donde dice More y ahí al lado dice Language Interpretation y puedes seleccionar español. Muchas gracias.
Thank you so much. We are so happy to have translation when we have the commissioner join us, which we will continue through the end of this fiscal year and then kick started again when the board meetings start back again and the commissioner joins us. Just want to say that yesterday there was an inauguration for President Trump. And there also were a series of executive orders, and we know we've gotten questions on the call before about kind of decision-making, who has what power. We know that's part of Advocacy 101, so we will continue to monitor that. We also have had folks ask for speakers around kind of immigration, and we have confirmed the executive director of MIRA, and she will be on next week, next Wednesday. And then Danielle Ewan will be on tomorrow morning, with just an update from the federal level. So if you have questions or that you issues that you think that you need more information on, please, you can send me an email. I'll put my email in chat. But as we continue to kind of, book people the 9:30 call, we want to make sure being responsive. But there was a peaceful transition of power, which was exciting to see. And so we will continue to kind of keep up on all those issues that are happening at the federal level and then think about any impact that would be happening here in Massachusetts. And now that I've finished talking, Commissioner, I'm going to remind us both to speak slowly so that Shay can keep up with us as she is translating. So, Commissioner, welcome. Happy New Year. We're so glad that you'll continue to come once a month. We really appreciate you joining us and would love to hear an update from, we know the board meeting was last week, and we're happy to have you with us today.
Good morning, Amy and 9:30 callers. Thank you so much for having me here this morning. So great to be in community with all of you. And yesterday was Inauguration Day, but also Martin Luther King Day. So wanting to take a moment, hope folks had an opportunity to reflect on their service, which is something Martin Luther King Day always provides us the opportunity to do, and to think about his life and legacy, and to sort of recommit our work to kindness and compassion and engagement with community, and feels more important than ever. I know there are a lot of worries and concerns about what the transition at the federal level means, and we will continue to work in partnership with strategies and our partners across the Commonwealth to provide as much guidance and information. I want to encourage everyone to engage with Mira, who's been really engaging with our communities about Know Your Rights. And I know there's also work happening, the Governor's Office, our Executive Office of Education, and the Attorney General's Office to make sure that we're getting guidance out for those of you who are worried about your families. We have been working closely with our colleagues at Housing and Livable Communities over the last year for our families who are in shelter to make sure that we are aligned at the state level and providing as much guidance as we can as the situation continues to evolve. We are committed to people's rights in Massachusetts and to staying to who we are. Many of you may have had a chance to view the Governor's State of the Commonwealth address last week. She talked about exciting investments to make Massachusetts more competitive and more affordable, including housing and transportation, education, and childcare. So we are looking forward to the year ahead and staying true to the work we have undertaken together to transform and support our early education and care system. And the Governor remains incredibly committed to all of you, to our educators, to the experience of families in the Commonwealth. She will be releasing her budget proposal, and I know, Amy, you will walk everyone through the budget process and what's in the budget. The Governor will be releasing her proposal tomorrow, so we're looking forward to being able to talk with all of you about what's included in that proposal and staying in touch as the long process unfolds over the next several months with our legislative partners. We did indeed have a board meeting last week. We had a number of really important items that we discussed. The first was our FY25 increase in childcare financial assistance rates. The second was a new program on loan repayment for staff working in EAC programs. We had a fantastic presentation from our behavioral health team about work at the agency, in the community, and at the state level around behavioral health and trauma-informed training resources. And I believe that work will come for a dedicated time at the 9:30 call. So I'm not going to focus on that today, but if you had a chance, I'm just really excited about the work that the team we've been building to support behavioral and mental health resources in the community. There isn't a single program that I visit across the state where I don't hear about the significant behavioral health challenges our children are facing and the impact that's having on our program leadership and on our educators. And we are working to really address and identify additional resources that can be brought to the community, starting with really building additional staffing at the department to be able to support programs in the field and our educators, and really across all of our programs. So excited that you will host that group to talk about that work at an upcoming meeting. We ended our meeting last Wednesday with kind of a look back at the things we've been working on this fiscal year and a look ahead to what else awaits our work in this year. We may not have time this morning to focus on those, but Amy, happy to come back and talk a little bit about what this year's priorities are at the agency. And I know that we will also have a chance to come, and the secretary will be here on February 11th to talk about the work of our interagency task force on the whole of government approach to childcare and early education. So I look forward to coming back as we are just about at the 1-year anniversary of the signing of the executive order that created that task force. And a lot of terrific work has happened over the past year, engaging with our agencies across state government to understand the challenges and the incredible strengths in the early education and care field, and how the rest of government can bring resources to support our work. And I'm excited for the next couple years where we will continue that work in that task force. I would say the first year has really been focused on learning and listening. And we anticipate a first year report coming out sometime in the next month that will highlight some of that work. And no report, I don't think, could really capture some of the meaningful work that's happened, whether it's with our Executive Office of Labor and Workforce Development or our Executive Office of Economic Development, as those agencies and the staff and the resources in those agencies are looked at in a new light, understanding how they might be leveraged to support early education and care. So I feel it's a good day to feel some level of hope, and I feel very hopeful about the work of that task force in elevating our field and bringing new resources. So excited for those conversations coming.
And Amy, just quick programming notes. On February 3rd, Audrey Smolkin, who is the Executive Director of the Center on Wellbeing and Trauma in the Office of the Child Advocate that also presented at the board meeting, they will be with us on February 3rd. They booked this months in advance in anticipation of both their, their presentation at the board and, wanting to come on the 9:30 call. The other piece I'll say is a loan forgiveness program that got discussed. That was something that was in the budget. So it's a good example of a policy gets set in the budget that directs the department to do something, and then the department has to do it. And so I think as we are continuing on the budget policy advocacy train, that's just really important to remember. And you think of how much policy was just passed in the budget in July or whenever the governor signed in August. So just to be always thinking about that, the department has its chunk of work, and then there's other work that comes as a result of legislation in the budget.
Do you want me to start with the loan repayment program?
Sure.
Then, since you've
repayment, I had the wrong word. Yes.
So, thanks to the advocacy of many, this year's budget included an additional $7.5 million for loan forgiveness. Indeed, that was the language that was in the budget. And many of you will remember that we had another $7.5 million for scholarships for early educators. And we have been working really closely with our department and board of higher education, who really are the experts in higher education, to work on implementing new programs and funding. So with this $7.5 million, which again in the budget was tagged towards loan forgiveness, but the department and board of higher education already run what they call loan repayment programs. So we think, working with the experts who know how to do this, they have agreed to take on this program for us and manage what will be a loan repayment program. It's $7.5 million. It'll be administered by the Department of Higher Education, and we are working with them right now, and we will obviously stay in touch when that application is available. And it will be up to hold on, sorry, I got to get to the loan repayment details. Up to $7,500 a year for folks who have taken on loans for an undergraduate program. And staff working in childcare and early education, and also our residential programs, will be eligible to apply for this loan repayment program up to $7,500 a year till the funding runs out. And it is a really good example, Amy, that the final budget included this additional money. It directed the agency to stand up a new program and resources for loan repayment for those who are working in the field and have taken on loans. And we have decided that we should work with the experts in higher education to set up a dedicated program for staff working in EEC programs. And we're looking forward. It's an exciting resource. And I do hear from staff around the state when I talk to them about loans that they're paying off. And it's an important part of helping support overall compensation and resources if we can relieve some of those loan payments that staff working in the field have. The priority will be for staff who've worked in the field for 5 years, but everyone is eligible to apply. And there will be an expectation that staff who receive the payment will stay in the field for at least a year. So we look forward to, well, I'm sure we'll be hosting information sessions when that application is available, and we'll work with you, Amy, to make sure all the 930 callers are aware, and that we can share that information with our staff and members of our community who could benefit. So
Great.
I know Eugenia put the board deck link in the chat. So if you want more information about the loan repayment program, you can go ahead and look at those slides, and more information will be coming shortly. The other big item on the agenda that the board took action on, we had, it's another good example of how the budget sets priorities for the agency. There was 22.5, actually 20 million originally, and then an additional supplemental budget, an additional 2.5 million. So the total amount of resources available for childcare financial assistance rate increases this year is 22.5. It's important to note that the supplemental budget language, that additional 2.5, the language that was included in the budget limited those funds to be used only for center-based programs. So again, an important note about how budget language dictates some of the constraints or rules that the agency has to follow when it implements new increases.
So is this right, Amy? In the budget, the fiscal year 25 budget, 22.5 million was approved. And then there was a supplemental budget.
20 was
20
approved.
20,
That
and
was
then,
for everyone participating in childcare financial assistance, out of school time, center-based,
got it.
childcare.
And then there was a supplemental budget, which means a budget beyond that one. And there was how much in that?
2.5.
But, and that 2.5 million was just for centers.
So we worked really hard to make sure that the language around the full 20 million was inclusive of our entire system.
Yeah.
And then there was an additional amount of funds that were added. So it does complicate a little bit.
Right.
But you, again, can take a look at the slides. At our December board meeting, we had a very long presentation. All of you are aware that the agency has been moving away from market rate as a way to set rates and moving to the cost of care as a way to inform childcare financial assistance, both the structure and the rates. Last year, with our 65 million in funding, we were able to implement, as you are aware, large increases as well as changes in the structure to simplify it, to make it more equitable, and to adjust sort of long-standing inequities by geography, types of care, and age groups. And this proposal this year that the board took action on continues that progress. So the proposal that we presented to the board that they supported and voted to take action on includes both some across the board increases, so recognizing that everyone's costs have gone up, and also some targeted increases that make sure that we're addressing those rates that are furthest from the cost of care. So again, if you look at the slide deck from the board meeting last week, you can see the specific proposal in terms of the across the board, which is somewhere between 1 and 1.5%, which we know is not sufficient to cover the cost of increases, but it reflects the amount of funding that we have. And then an additional amount is being used to address rates that are furthest from the cost, whether it's for family child care or certain regions like the Northeast, or certain age groups like infant care. So you can see the proposal. We are making progress in supporting rate increases for everyone, and then in specific targeted areas, increases for certain age groups, certain regions, and certain types of care. This is a long journey to get where we want to go in terms of the actual cost of care. And I think it was the agency's priority to make sure that we continued that progress towards both things. Everyone's costs have gone up. and we want to make progress in those rates that are furthest from the cost of care. One important note is that we have a statutory requirement to consult with SEIU 509, which represents our family child care providers who participate in child care financial assistance. So we are required to consult with them on the payment and rate structure before implementing an increase. And so those conversations are in process. So we will be able to move forward with the center-based increase as soon as the agency is able. We're hoping to be able to move those through in the next month or two. And when the discussions with 509 are successfully concluded, and I am confident they will be, we'll be able to move forward with a rate increase for the family child care as well, which we intend to have follow exactly what the board's actions were on Wednesday. So I know there were some questions. The language between the two different amounts of funding, that they were geared towards different populations, and that the timeline for center and family childcare is kind of confusing and complicated for all of us and for the agency to administer. But again, meeting the requirements of what the legislature told us to do in the language, and then meeting our contractual obligations and statutory requirement to work with the union prior to implementing the family child care rate increase. All the rate increases will be retroactive to July 1st of this year. So even if they're coming in April, March or April, they will all go back to the beginning of the fiscal year. So I'm going to stop there, Amy, and see if there are some important questions that folks have.
So Harold and emailed us about this as well, but just, you know, with the press release, as you just tried to do, the communication around this can be very tricky. So maybe a suggestion of, or maybe if it's not the press release, another place where there's like a summary of like, this is what happened, because it can be very confusing, and we know that people are just trying to get accurate information.
And it's very important that we respect the relationship with our union. So I'll just say the press release reflected the ones we know we're going to be moving forward with, because the board took action and the center-based ones can move forward. And as soon as we successfully complete those consultations with the union, we can also communicate, hopefully, with clarity exactly what will be happening. But I think the most important thing I want to say is, like, family child care will 100% be getting a rate increase along with the center-based programs. And that is the proposal that the agency brought to the board and that the board supported. It will require finalizing those conversations with 509 on the family child care side, and then moving forward to implement that rate increase. And I apologize for all of us that it's this complicated.
But I think understanding what the backstory is, or the rationale of this is how we have to do it, this is the order of operations, is helpful. Kim Dion from the Resource and Referral Agencies is coming on the call next Monday. And we know there are also a lot of questions about voucher, as in it's frozen, and what does that mean? So Amy Kay, in 4 minutes or less, can you tell us what's happening there?
Sure. As I've said here and at the board meeting, the good news is that we are serving more kids in childcare financial assistance than we ever have. I've said here a number of times too, we made it easier for families to access the system. DCF and DTA families are accessing childcare financial assistance at higher rates than we have seen in past years. So we're thrilled that we were able to provide childcare financial assistance to more families than we really ever have at EC. The hard part is that we have expended all the funds that are available for this fiscal year currently to be able to make childcare financial assistance vouchers available for our income eligible population. So we don't anticipate being able to open up the waiting list for childcare financial assistance for income eligible vouchers. It remains open for our DTA referred families and for continuity of care. So that's siblings or families that are transitioning from DCF or DTA related childcare. And we're also in the process of implementing the childcare financial assistance contracts. And there's a lot of movement there. So we in some cases, we purchased additional capacity, particularly in infants and in family childcare and different places. So we are seeing movement in the caseload. In other words, more DTA and DCF families. As those contracts are implemented, some families are moving to vouchers, some families are enrolling in new contract seats. So there is a lot of movement in the child care financial assistance caseloads, but we don't anticipate right now being able to open to vouchers for families, income eligible families who are currently on the waiting list.
And I think this ties back to the original conversation about the budget. So we know on Wednesday, wait, is it this week?
Yeah, tomorrow.
Oh my God. So tomorrow, because today's Tuesday, Governor Healy will release her budget recommendations for fiscal year 26, which is our next fiscal year. We heard at the State of the Commonwealth last week about some of her priorities. We know that transportation has been something that's been getting a lot of attention. We know that some thinking about the decisions that are made at the federal level and the impact that will have on DC. So just like each of you are making your personal budget and some of you have to make organizational budgets, you have all these kind of things to consider as you're doing that. So on Wednesday, we will see the budget in the afternoon. On Thursday, we'll give you a quick highlight of what that is. We know our folks, our friends at Mass Taxpayers Foundation and Mass Budget and Policy Center will be doing deeper dives into the kind of looking through the budget and sharing that information as well. But this is why it is so important, not just about the dollar amount, but about the language that comes along. And sometimes you can think, that looks like it's a good idea, but then when you go try to implement it, or it might conflict with something that already exists. So you have to be so careful and thoughtful. Amy, there's a quick question. Is there any chance that Flex Pool will be open again for income eligible vouchers?
The question is a little confusing. We don't use the Flex Pool for vouchers, but the new contracts implement what had been a previous rule around a 5% cap on the income eligible Flex Pool. We had used an uncapped Flex Pool during and post-COVID to be able to increase the caseload back to pre-COVID levels. And the good news is that worked. And we are back well beyond those pre-COVID levels in child care financial assistance. So the new contracts do currently have a flex pool in them, and they are capped at 5%. The most important thing, I think, relative to Amy's comments is that we are driven by the amount of funding we have available. And so being able to open either the flex pool beyond that amount or open up the vouchers is really dependent on making sure that we're living within our budget. So there won't be an additional opening of the flex pool or the vouchers. We're not anticipating that in this current year. And I know that's really hard. I mean, I think it remains a really exciting time in early education and care, and also a challenging and anxious one. We know we have a lot of families on the waiting list. We have a lot of programs who would like to serve additional families in childcare financial assistance. And we will remain in partnership with all of you as we continue to grow our system. Support, we anticipate continued support for C3 and the Commonwealth Cares for Children through the budget, which has been an amazing transformation program for our field. And continued new resources, whether it's loan repayment or scholarships, as we continue to support the system in general.
I think, Amy, thank you so much for joining us. And I've asked folks to just share appreciation in the chat for you joining. It's so helpful to have you come once a month. I think we'll do a deeper dive about, and maybe through the department or even externally, about how it works with the money that's allocated for the financial assistance and then what happens. Because I think, with the contracts and the voucher, I think it's very hard to give answers about it because you know what you have to work with, but there are all variables that you have to consider. And we know and appreciate that when you say something, people take it seriously. So you also have to be thoughtful because you don't want to overpromise. You don't know what might happen. And so I think kind of doing a little bit more of an explainer about like, here's the money that how it comes. This is how we have to get it out. I think that would be helpful. I mean, it's so encouraging to see the questions that are coming through chat, to hear people, how they're paying attention. I also added to chat, like, we so appreciate the people who are getting questions from your colleagues and you're trying to give them accurate information, but you might not understand, the questions or what they're asking. And so the good news is we can all learn this together in this incredible community. We have so many folks who know things, and to become that trusted place for good information, because that is going to be more important than ever. And as Amy said, it's not always straightforward. There are all these variables that we have to consider. So I just really want to acknowledge that, both to the folks who are, I love the 9:30 callers, Amy, as you frame it, but also to the team at EEC, kind of led by the commissioner. I think your determination to make it as easily understandable while also understanding that you do work for the government and you have to make sure that you are giving accurate information all the time. So just want to acknowledge and thank you for that. If people have questions, and this happens all the time, people email us, then I'm ready to ask the commissioner the question, whether it's on the 9:30 call, or we can also work to get additional information. So please keep the questions coming, even if you don't quite know what you're asking. Say, I heard something about this, I need some information. Commissioner, I'll give you the last word. We did hit 186 people this morning, Commissioner, so that is great news too.
That's amazing. So this is just an incredible opportunity, and I know the information's not always like clear, and but we are determined to work in partnership with all of you and to stay together as we navigate some of these really complicated so things that are in our control and things that are not in our control. And I think it's, every time I come, I think it's no more, it's the most important time to stay together. And then I think like it keeps being the most important time. So I just want to acknowledge the EEC team as well. Really, you couldn't have a better set of public servants committed to trying to help make our system understandable and accessible, to make sure your voices are heard in all the work that we're doing. So Eugenia put her, you probably don't need, you probably all have her email, which is great. So if there are additional questions about anything we talked about this morning, the team is really committed to trying to get answers out to you, even if I wasn't able to do all of that today in our short time. So Amy, thank you for your leadership, and 9:30 callers, stay warm out there.
And thank you to Excel Linguistics, to the team. We're so excited to be working with you in this. So the recording will be available in both English and Spanish. And we encourage you, remember, everybody is welcome on the 9:30 call. So please spread the word to your colleagues, to your friends, to people who want accurate information. And we will be on the call tomorrow morning with Danielle Ewan to hear an update from the federal level. So please join us then. Have a good day. Stay warm is right. And thank you so much for joining us.